Jó napot kívánok, kedves kollégák! Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I welcome you at the session of the Association of the Hungarian Economists, organized by the European Union section of the association. My name is Gábor Iván. I'm the president of the EU section, and I will host our meeting today. You can follow our meeting live by our WebEx connection or on the YouTube channel of the association, where you can listen to our talks even later since it is being recorded. This afternoon, we will discuss the priorities of the Belgian presidency of the Council of the EU. Our guest discussion partner is His Excellency Jeroen Vergeylen, Ambassador of Belgium to Budapest, whom I would like to warmly welcome. Dear Mr. Ambassador, first of all, thank you for having accepted our invitation. The Belgian presidency, as part of the Spanish-Belgian-Hungarian trio, has taken over the responsibilities of the presidency when the end of the current institutional cycle is approaching to its end. This period is always demanding for the institutions to agree on as many dossiers as possible. What is maybe even more challenging in these days is the overall political environment with external and internal tensions. You have just mentioned the war in Ukraine or the demonstrations by farmers in many member states. The motto of the Belgian presidency, protect, strengthen, prepare, seems to be very much appropriate for the next semester when Belgium will preside the Council. Dear Mr. Ambassador, may I invite you to share with us your views about the priorities of the presidency. And after your presentation, I will open the floor for questions. I will encourage our colleagues to use the chat box to put questions to you. Mr. Ambassador, the floor now is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Iván, and to the Association of Hungarian Economists, which is an organization with a very long history and tradition, and I'm very honored to be your invitee this afternoon. Jó napot kívánok from Budapest. I am truly grateful for this opportunity to talk about the EU Council Presidency's priorities for such a distinguished audience, but I beg to receive your compassion and patience because I am not an economist myself, and I would not want to fall into the trap of going into a discussion with distinguished economists on economic issues. However, you know, as diplomats, we have to be able to present our views in a comprehensible and comprehensive way. So I will do my best, and thank you for bearing with me. As you mentioned, Dr. Iván, this is a very timely presentation in a busy week for the European Union. We are having an extraordinary meeting of the European Council on Thursday. It's starting tomorrow evening. And as you know, the objective is to decide on a review of the multi-annual financial framework until 2027, which of course includes a substantial aid package for Ukraine. And this defines already one very important political priority for the Belgian presidency. This is deliver on the support for Ukraine as long as it takes. This was also the orientation that was very clearly given by our heads of state and government during the European Council of December. But the review of the multi-annual financial framework is not only about Ukraine. There are also other elements in there, and one of them is very important. It is about strengthening our competitiveness, and more particularly funds that will be used for what we call STEP. It's the Strategic Technologies for Europe platform, and I will talk about it later, but it's just to give an indication that this is also a very important priority, competitiveness. And also other issues will be taken aboard in this review of the MFF, and this is, for instance, migration. There are additional budgetary resources being foreseen for that. And also that, I think, is an important priority. Just to say that even if the European Council is not immediately a concern for our executive presidency of the Council as an institution, of course, it already includes a lot of important priorities and orientations for the Council work that will continue for the next weeks and months. A few general remarks maybe before going into the various areas of priorities. First of all, of course, Belgium is one of the 6 founding members of the European Union, and it is our 13th presidency. Our first presidency was in 1958. It's a long time ago, a very long time before my own birth, by the way. So I certainly don't remember it. I wasn't even there. It is my own third presidency. I was already a diplomat during a very junior one, during our presidency in 2001 and the second one in 2010. And so now it is my own third presidency. And being it the 13th presidency for Belgium, many colleagues have told me, Belgians, they know how to do this. They have a lot of experience. And my answer to that is always, well, yes, maybe, but no, because no presidency is ever the same. We should be humble because the situation is always different, and we always have to start again. And also there are always new dynamics and also new staff. Honestly, I mean, like myself, but also younger colleagues for whom it is maybe the first presidency. So we always have to take this into account as well. So it is never the same as before, and this is true. You already referred to it for this presidency as well, because we are at the end of the legislative cycle. There is a significant pressure to finalize as many legislative files as possible before the European Parliament is dissolved in April. This means that we have time until about mid-February maybe to dissolve or let's say finalize most of the work in the Council, because then we have to go to the European Parliament to negotiate, and then there are some final details, texts and translations and so on that have to be finalized. So we have a very short time frame to work on the legislative files. I was told that there are about 150 legislative dossiers now on the Council table. Maybe about 60 to 70 of them could be finalized before the end of the legislative cycle. So it's a lot of work and pressure on the presidency and on the European Parliament as well, of course. The good news is that, of course, the members of the European Parliament, they will face the voters, they will go to elections, and they, I think, also want to deliver many files. So that is certainly what we are feeling, and we are very grateful for all the support that we are getting from also the negotiators in the European Parliament. And I think that interinstitutional work is going very well. Our presidency is also different because we are always facing new crises. In 2001 presidency, second half, we were faced with 9/11. It was completely turning over our priorities. We had to completely change our approach. So it was a big experience for us. In 2010, we were in the middle of the euro and debt crisis that we also had to handle. And now we are also faced with multiple crises. We have a war in Ukraine, in the Middle East. We are dealing with the challenges of climate change, still the consequences of the pandemic, of the energy crisis, of demographic crisis. You mentioned also the agricultural crisis, maybe, and many other challenges also brought about by new technologies, artificial intelligence, and so on and so on. So multiple crises and challenges. And in all of this, our Prime Minister was very clear about it when he presented the priorities. Our citizens are looking at us, and they require certainty, and they want perspective. They know to hear from us where we are going, and this is what we are trying to help to deliver. And our motto, therefore, is protect our citizens, strengthen our economy in a sustainable way, so strengthen our companies, and also prepare for the future of Europe. And this entails many things. We have to make the Union future-proof. Some people also say enlargement-proof, because this is certainly also an important file that we will advance during the next coming weeks and months. Now, our duty is to chair the Council. It means that we have to foster consensus, that we have to push the legislative work forward, but also prepare the next legislative cycle. And one important item there is that we have to prepare the new strategic agenda. This is a strategic agenda for the European Union for the next cycle. We are, of course, the European Council is in the lead, but we will work on this also in the General Affairs Council. It is a strategic agenda for the next 5 years. And we hope to adopt it in June, so that the new Commission, when it starts working, will be able to base its work program on this strategic document. So strategic agenda is very important. And also our ambition is to have a kind of roadmap for internal reforms. I mentioned that the European Union has to be future-proof. Now, it is not our ambition to solve all the problems and to conclude on how we are going to go about it. Our objective is to work on a kind of roadmap for this. How will we push the reflection forward so that we can come to conclusions? And there are 3 areas in the internal reform agenda that we would like to distinguish. The first, of course, is the policies of the European Union. Are they still future-proof? The second one is the budgetary resources. We always need more budgetary resources for many new challenges, and so we have to think about how are we going to organize this in the future. And then the third one, of course, is also the institutional efficiency. I would say the governance of the European Union itself, that also requires some reflection in order to make it more efficient. And then, of course, a last general remark, we are in a trio presidency. We are working together with our predecessor, Spain, that delivered a very effective presidency, and they did a lot of groundwork that we can benefit from now. And of course, then Hungary will take over in July. And we have already worked together with our Hungarian and Spanish colleagues for more than a year and a half now. We had to draft the trio program. And still today, we are working together on a daily basis to implement, in fact, all the aspects of our trio program. So if you allow me, Dr. Iván, I would just say that the political focus is on delivering the unwavering support to Ukraine as long as it takes. Secondly, the enlargement negotiations. We have a lot of files on the table with the countries of the Western Balkans, of course, for some time already, and then new enlargement candidates, Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia. The Belgian presidency will push this process forward. It is, of course, a merit-based process that everyone agrees on. And I would like to point out that we are celebrating this year on the 1st of May, the 20th anniversary of the accession of 10 member states, which included Hungary, which happened in 2004. And this is also something that we will mark during our presidency with an event, a big event in Brussels, which you will have the pleasure of attending, I hope. This is important to us because we still believe that the enlargement of 2004 was a very important achievement for the people of those 10 member states, but also for the EU as a whole. And this needs to be celebrated. And then the third political focus, I think, as I mentioned before, is the roadmap for internal reforms of the European Union. Now, to go maybe into 5 thematic areas for the legislative work, mainly, but not only, but I would say really our focus is on 5 areas. The first area is defending the rule of law, democracy, and unity of the European Union. Why? Because these are the founding principles on which the European Union is built. I would like to draw a parallel with the economic and budgetary governance system that we have. We call it the European semester, or the where every member state is evaluated regularly on the basis of the requirements of the Stability and Growth Pact, which is a term that we used to use. This is, of course, for economic governance and fiscal governance. And everybody agrees that this is very important. But we also need that actually for the rule of law and for democracy. So also this kind of framework has to be in place, and it is in place. And this is being handled in the General Affairs Council, but not only. We are talking about various mechanisms, peer reviews, where member states talk about each other's rule of law and democracy. But there are also other instruments, for instance, the conditionality mechanism that makes sure that the EU funds that are distributed to the member states are used properly. And this is also very important that we, as a Belgian presidency, continue to make sure that these procedures are handled in a responsible way. As I said, this is about respect for the founding principles of the European Union. If this is not working, then of course nothing will work properly. The second thematic area is strengthening our competitiveness. And there we are talking about deepening further our internal market and ensuring our industrial future. As an ambassador here in Budapest, I very often have the opportunity to talk about our bilateral relations, and I always start with saying that countries like Belgium and Hungary, they are very similar in various ways. First of all, we are more or less of similar size, not in territory entirely, but in population, you could say. We are both export-led economies, dependent on foreign investment. We are open economies. We are dependent on trade. And so we need the EU to ensure a level playing field for our businesses, which are mainly SMEs in Belgium as well as in Hungary. And so we have to make sure that they can compete fairly, both within Europe, but also on the global stage. And so we need a coherent and predictable and simplified regulatory framework. And this is a very big priority for us. And I think it's entirely shared by our trio partners, including Hungary. Competing with the US and China is a challenge. These countries, they have very large subsidy schemes available to their companies. They have access to cheaper energy and natural resources and commodities, which we don't necessarily have in Europe. But we have something in the EU, and that is our European cooperation and our internal markets. And the energy crisis has demonstrated that the Union can deliver if it is unified. And as I said before, our citizens are expecting this from us. Now, we hope to make an important step forward in developing and deepening our internal market further. It is one of the EU's great achievements. Unfortunately, we had to say goodbye to one of the founders of the internal market, Jacques Delors, very recently. But we are learning from his vision still. He is still with us, and the director of the Jacques Delors Institute at the moment is Enrico Letta. It's the former Italian prime minister, whom we asked to present a report at the European Council in March with further steps to develop the European internal market. And we think that there will be important issues there, like what are we going to do with state aid, but also other issues like how are we going to develop labor markets and so on. So this is certainly a big priority and will enhance our competitiveness for the future. Also, our industrial future is very important. I talked about STEP, the strategic technologies platform for Europe. We have to make sure that our industry and our companies, that they are able to make the transition to a carbon low economy, or even a climate neutral economy in the longer term. It means that we have to put more money, pool more money also into research and development, in helping these industries to develop these new strategic technologies, and what is even more important, to make sure that they are the best in the world, that that the EU can give a quality label to these new innovative technologies. Then the third thematic area, I'm making the link very easily now, is exactly to make sure that this green transition happens. We have to continue working on the Green Deal, but that it is also a just transition. A green and a just transition, we call it, and it means that it has to be a transition that is affordable for citizens and companies, while moving towards climate neutrality and while stimulating new technologies, as I have just mentioned. Another important piece of legislation is the Net Zero Industry Act, for instance, that we hope to finalize during our presidency. We need to strike a balance between preparing our economies for the transition and protecting our citizens against the effects that will have or might have on their jobs, on their purchasing power, and so on. This is politically tricky, of course, because it may give rise to some concerns and some discontent maybe, and then of course also it may lead to populism. And here I think the challenge that we all have now is to focus on the benefits of this transition, and we have to achieve this transition hopefully before others. This is also about competitiveness. If we achieve it before the others, then we will be, of course, more competitive in the long run. The fourth thematic area is reinforcing our social and health agenda. There are many issues here, but maybe I can describe it from the angle of the post-COVID era that we are now in, or hopefully in. During this COVID crisis, we have learned a lot about our health systems, but we need also to continue working on crisis preparedness, also on the security of medicine supply. We have to develop a strategy to boost the health and care workforce, because we need a lot of workers in this field, especially also with aging populations. And we also will lead, as a EU Council presidency, the negotiations for the EU on a new pandemic treaty that is being negotiated multilaterally within the framework of the World Health Organization. This is the health aspects, but on the other hand, during COVID, we also had to adapt to new technologies, and we discovered new ways to organize our labor markets. We have home office, platform work, but also we have mental health issues at work, issues of labor mobility, sustainable social protection, and issues like these that have to be tackled, and these will be tackled in an important social dimension of our presidency priorities. I'm going to the fifth thematic area, which is protecting people and borders. And for us, this is in a spirit of responsibility and solidarity. Both are important. Of course, we all know that migration is a thorny issue as well. The Spanish presidency was very successful. They were able to strike a deal between the Council and the European Parliament on the so-called asylum and migration package. and it will be our task now to finalize the legal texts. I believe there are 5 regulations in there, and to start implementing them afterwards. Important elements here are the screening of migrants at the border, the introduction of a solidarity mechanism between member states, and there is also an important external dimension, which means that we will have to conclude more agreements with third countries. It is quite ambitious, but we have to take into account that this package will also hopefully disrupt the business model of the people smugglers, because of course this is also a very important objective. And larger than just migration and asylum, of course, we will have to continue working also on the fight against organized crime and terrorism. That is also a very important priority. And then lastly, the 6th thematic area is promoting a global Europe. How would we like to see this? This is by strengthening the EU's resilience and autonomy through fully mobilizing the EU's economic, security and defense capacities. So there are various aspects here. Of course, we will continue on concluding trade agreements, we like to talk about reducing harmful dependencies in the EU, but rather than seeing this merely as a cutting down on Russian gas or raw materials from third countries, we as Belgian presidency, we see this also as an ambition to enhance and increase trade agreements. They are in the interest of our citizens and companies, and certainly for open and export-led economies, like I mentioned before, Belgium and Hungary. But there is also a geopolitical bonus. The world is changing, and we have to change with it. We like to talk about, we as Belgium, but there are certainly other member states, there are Benelux partners, for instance, also emphasize it. We like to talk about open strategic autonomy. We do not advocate the new protectionist or isolationist agenda, certainly not. I would just like to mention that our Prime Minister, Mr. De Croo, was in China in the beginning of this month. And we all know that China is a strategic competitor for the EU, but also a partner, and we have to strive to find a balance there. We need China, for instance, as others as well, by the way, on our energy transition and also on our climate efforts. And so this is what we mean with open strategic autonomy. Yes, autonomy, of course, it is very important, but we cannot cut ourselves off. We have interests in developing relations further with other global partners. I think, Dr. Iván, that I will stop here. There are a lot of other things, of course, I haven't mentioned them, but maybe we can go into them during the question time. So I am at your disposal for that now. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for your presentation. It was covering quite a wide range of actions and priorities. It looks quite ambitious and promising. Now, during your presidency, there will be also European elections, European Parliament elections. As you mentioned, this is the end of the institutional cycle, so work is speeding up. In that context, how do you see what of your priorities, what the areas you mentioned could have an important impacts on the citizens when they go to vote about the members of the European Parliament?
Well, I think that, well, I hope that all our priorities have an impact on the voters, on the citizens of the EU, because otherwise I think there wouldn't be priorities. We hope that these are the issues that are important for our citizens. That was really our motivation for choosing these thematic areas. But of course, depending on where citizens live and in which kind of environment they live or in which social situation they are, they might have, of course, their own priorities, and this is very normal. Personally, I think that for the European Union citizens living on borders with Russia, for instance, I think for them it will be a great priority to see that the incoming European Parliament will have a very clear voice on this and how to protect them against these threats. I think this might be for them a very important theme. Other citizens might be concerned by migration, for instance. I can imagine some countries, the border areas, southern and eastern borders of the European Union, that this is a concern for them, but not only for them, also for countries with no external borders, like my own. Of course, we can see the challenges caused by migration, and especially migration that is not handled properly and migration that is not regular. So we hope that the Asylum and Migration Pact will be an answer to it, but I can imagine that this might be an important theme as well. And then I think the third one is broadly speaking, the socio-economic themes, because that we have had a COVID crisis, we have had an energy crisis, we have had an economic crisis, that we still seeing the consequences of this. And I think for many citizens and companies as well, this is a huge issue that makes their future maybe look uncertain. And so they will look at our candidates for the European Parliament elections to come with answers and to provide as I said before, certainty and perspective to make sure that their economic concerns are let's say, receiving the appropriate answers.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I'm coming to the chat box. We have actually two questions about cooperation between your embassy and the Hungarian government. How you cooperate with the Hungarian government officials on achieving your priorities, and in the context of the next presidency. I mean, what is the cooperation between your embassy and the Hungarian government in the context of the upcoming Hungarian presidency?
I did get the second part of your question. If you
So
repeat it.
Sure. So on the one hand, the nature of cooperation between your embassy and the government on your priorities, and the second one in the context of the upcoming Hungarian presidency. So what kind of dossiers you may discuss which will spill over to the Hungarian presidency, or what kind of operational cooperation you see in Budapest between your colleagues and the government?
Yes, thank you. Well, I have arrived here in Budapest relatively recently, let's say last August. That is about 5 months now. The preparations, of course, for the presidencies and also the trio were already going on when I arrived. I must say I have only seen excellent cooperation. I have very professional counterparts. Here in Budapest, there was, when I arrived, there was a new ministry established, the Ministry for EU Affairs. Previously, it was part of the Ministry of Justice. Now it has its own independent ministry, and it's headed by a very competent minister, János Bóka, whom we are in touch with very regularly. Myself personally, I was honored to host Minister Bóka last Friday in my residence together with the other EU ambassadors here in Budapest to talk about the Belgian presidency, but also other very topical issues. And we are having a very good exchange of views, very professional. Also, the other colleagues at the EU ministry, they are very available. And then from the start, I was told that the Hungarian government would be preparing and handling their own presidency in a very professional way. It is also not their first time, and so far, I must say, I can only confirm this. This is also what I heard from my colleagues in Brussels. The Hungarian colleagues are working very hard and doing all they can to deliver on what we agreed. I don't want to go into political discussions here, but we all know that there are differences of view between our governments on certain issues. This is also the case with other governments. I mean, this is why we also need sometimes something like the European Union, to talk about issues and to come to a consensus and to find solutions together, even if there are differences of view, and we have to look for common ground. This is not a secret. Our Hungarian counterparts, they know very well what our views are, and we express them very clearly. And this is also the case vice versa. And I think it's our job as officials, as diplomats especially, to look for the common ground and not to emphasize the differences. So all in all, I think very positive. Now, the carrying over to the Hungarian presidency, I think it will go very smoothly. In the council, this is very well prepared, and this is also thanks to institutions like the council secretariat that make sure that everything passes on smoothly, is prepared very well, and in a great spirit of continuity and professionalism. We will, of course, at that time be faced with a transition, because it will be just after the European elections. The European Parliament will have to be put in place. Then the new European Commission will have to be put in place. This will take some months because there will be hearings of the new commissioners and so on. So we think that the new Commission might take up its functions in November, maybe, but not earlier, probably. And so it means that the legislative agenda might be slowed down a little bit, but on the other hand, of course, at the working level, the work will just go on, and also, as I mentioned, there are important strategic political reflection dossiers that have to be carried over. This is about what I called making the EU future-proof. So I think there the Hungarian presidency will have to play its role to make sure that this process is advanced, and I'm sure that they will do this as an honest broker, as they have told us. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Coming back to the chat box, we have colleagues with great experience in agriculture. And also we have farmers demonstrating across Europe. The question is that how do you see what the Belgian presidency can do? Whether you have any priorities for the future agricultural policy? We expect that the next Commission will present the framework for the next framework for the next period, for the next 7-year period. But the strategic thinking about the future of the agricultural policy just started last week. Does your presidency have some ideas to promote or to hand over to the upcoming Hungarian presidency in that regard?
Well, to be honest with you, I am not a great expert on agriculture. But what I can see is that this is something that is of great importance for many citizens, for companies as well. And now, of course, also even more than before, for our political leaders. I think that for Belgium, it is important to reconcile in general the different aspects. We have to make sure that we have food security. We have to make sure that the agriculture is done in a sustainable way. That it is adapted to the future challenges, also of climate. But on the other hand, also making sure that that the EU has its own agricultural sector and that it remains competitive. So I think these are the ingredients of our strategic priorities. And I must apologize, I cannot go into further detail, but I'm sure that that this is being followed up in a very competent way by the relevant colleagues in the Council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. You mentioned the STEP regulation, the Strategic Technologies for European Platform. How do you see, I understand your presidency would like to conclude this proposal, to have an agreement, to reach an agreement with the Parliament. Do you think this agreement is in reach? Can we expect that there will be an interinstitutional agreement on this proposal?
I hope so. This is certainly, I think, our ambition, but I must say I'm not informed about the latest discussions on this, so I would like to be cautious. But I think it is also an important part of the priorities of our leaders, heads of state and government. This is certainly something that we will try to deliver, but it is also a very complex issue. But I think for the Commission too, it is a very important file. So I think we are together in this and we are pushing it forward. So yes, I dare to be optimistic.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Well, all of us are optimistic, and I also sincerely hope that this dossier, with many others, will be successfully concluded. Mr. Ambassador, there is another question which might be a bit more politically interesting, not necessarily an economic-related question. You mentioned the rule of law and the democracy, the importance of the rule of law. Actually, you mentioned in the first place. We have a question about the Article 7 procedure. There are two Article 7 procedures going on in the Council, one initiated by the Commission against Poland, and another initiated against Hungary by the Parliament. How your presidency will handle this? Will you make further steps, or you consider what may happen in the coming months to take your decision? So do you have an idea how to take forward this process?
Well, this is a process that has been on the table of the Council for a while, and the Belgian presidency is certainly intending to carry it forward. I think that we have foreseen to organize a hearing again, as we used to, as previous presidencies have done, and we will do so also in the General Affairs Council. This is, I think, that our objective as far as the Article 7 procedures is concerned.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. I think we are running out of questions. But this is also, I think, due to your very clear presentation. I enjoyed very much. You first provided us with a quite horizontal view about your objectives. Then you went down to concrete policy areas. I personally enjoyed very much, and this also maybe preempted some questions from our colleagues. Mr. Ambassador, if there are no more questions, I'm just checking again. I think we have run to the end of the questions. Then I would like warmly welcome Mr. Ambassador for having accepted our invitation. And may I wish you and the Belgian presidency every success for this semester.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Iván. It was a great pleasure. I was, as I said, very honored to be able to have this talk with you. I hope it was interesting, and thank you for the questions as well and for your moderation of this exchange. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. And thank you very much, dear colleagues, for having been with us, and see you at the next occasion.